All right. Hello. So we are here at Community Bucket Take 6. So again, this is part of the Dream Bucket podcast. This is a side bucket activity where John is doing fun projects that he thinks are fun because Casey and Nick, we can't get it out regularly enough, these weekly podcasts. So we got some more content. I'm very excited about who I have in the room that is put a microphone in front of their face, and then we're going to see what we're going to end up talking about. So I'm John from the Dream Bucket area, and then we've got 3 guests, Corey, Anthony, and Eddie, all here that have some relation and connection to the justice system, some of the juvenile justice system, some more of the adult system, from different areas. So I'm going to let them kind of introduce themselves and what their relationship is to it, and then we're going to start talking. If that doesn't work, a lot of these have been about parenting and dating apps. Corey was on for one of those earlier, and then we might just... we all have kids. We'll just go to that, if we can't find anything interesting about the court system. But we'll chat here for an hour. I think it's some really good people and dear friends of mine, so I think it'll be good, and then we'll just see what happens by the time we get done. All right. AJax, you want to go first? Your name starts with A.
Okay.
We'll do alphabetical.
All right. Well, I'm Anthony Jackson. I am a community navigator with the Ramsey County Youth Intervention Team, and what that consists of is I work with the youth who have been involved in auto thefts. So I have right now I have 88 kids on my caseload that I share with 2 other gentlemen, and just basically trying to keep these young men out of trouble. And I also work at Change Inc. Sorry about that, as a community cultural specialist. And what I do there is I work in Como Senior High School. Got a caseload of 10 and work with these same young men doing mostly the same thing, just trying to get them basic life skills and just trying to keep them on a straight and narrow and let them know that school is an essential part of life, that you have to have an education nowadays just to make it in this world.
And we're in Minneapolis and St. Paul area, working the Twin Cities. And then you got a history too, working with the guy next to you, right?
To me, yep.
So you and Corey worked together before this.
Yeah, we
mentoring.
Family. We as kids and worked with him also with Save Our Sons and doing the same things, going in and out of the juvenile system, man. Just trying to again keep these young African American men, future men, out of trouble, and just show them, man, that there's a different way of life, coming from the lifestyle that I've come from in my background, man, just trying to give back to our community.
And then, Mr. Byrd, how would you describe your relation to the justice system and things? We have a public defender in the house, so we're going to be tilting that way.
I'm Corey Byrd, Senior Director for Change Inc. at Change Inc. And we have the Director of Community Solutions. And some of the work that Anthony's talking about, I've helped him get that type of work implemented in the community. Also, I started I'm a partner with a nonprofit called the Council for Black Male Success. Also did some work in St. Paul that Anthony had talked about. I work with a guy by the name of Police Sergeant Melvin Carter, who was the father of the mayor, Melvin Carter. Me and him worked together in Save Our Sons. There's a program that he had over in St. Paul that is geared to working with African American boys in the community, trying to get them on the right path. And then I did I also got a nonprofit called Lifelong Mentoring Services. And that's kind of like working with at-risk youth in the community, but then they age out. That's why it's called a lifelong mentoring program. So when they become adults, I'm still working with them as adults. And so just got a lot of familiarity working with young men in the community, dealing with behavior strands that go from juvenile to adults. And then the work we do here with Change Inc. with dealing with mental health issues and behavior strands that also follow from juvenile to adults.
All right. And then, I don't know, Eddie, you want to say how you orient to the same area of work now recently?
Yeah, so I work at the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office. I'm an attorney in there. And I believe what prompted John to think about this conversation is I was having dinner with John once, and I shared how I was particularly interested in restorative justice work. I am involved in, I guess, a coalition of folks. There is a representation from Minnesota Freedom Fund, from the Legal Rights Center, and, you know, from, I guess, represent the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office. And there might be, there's also a few folks from Metro State that are kind of in this coalition, hoping to build out more restorative justice in the Twin Cities area. Maybe some more helpful background is restorative justice has been happening in Minnesota for a long time. A lot of people have been involved in it in different ways. And in my opinion, a lot of the political forces around the justice system like to keep restorative justice focused on juveniles and lower level offenses. And I think the application to juveniles is a great idea. I definitely support that. With the lower level offenses, sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes those lower level offenses should just be dismissed. I think that would be a more just and better for the community. But there's been a lot of resistance of applying restorative justice to some of the more, violent offenses that happen in the world. And there are some nonprofits in other parts of the country that have made some great strides in applying restorative justice principles and practices to like violent offenses. So this coalition that I'm in the Twin Cities, we're trying to bring that to the adults of Hennepin County and beyond.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, as far as I've been trained in restorative justice.
How do you use it, and how do you feel about it?
I think it's a great idea for the lower level offenses, and basically, now that, how could I put it? I'll put it this way: for the lower level offenses, yeah, but some offenses I don't like. If you murder somebody or take somebody's life, I don't. That restorative part is, I don't see how it could be restored with that family, because there's no possible way that you could go and say, hey, I killed your wife, and I want you to forgive me. And that's some things I just think you can't be forgiven for, and that's one of them. But as far as the lower level offenses, yeah, I think it works well, especially with the juveniles. It's been going pretty good for us, sitting down, just trying to give them a different structure and show them that, some of the things you can be forgiven for, but you just got to do it the right way and just keep following what you're being taught in the teachings. So.
As I hadn't thought about the forgiveness component as being a key part of the restorative. We did the restorative practice training here, just happened to be the same day that we'd gotten dinner too, which made that a fresh fitting conversation. And we was talking about at the school how to do different restorative practices. Yeah. And one of the big reflections we had was how much that used to happen a lot more at Gap School, and it was a lot of work. Who wants to be out there with the kids while they pick up all the cigarette butts and pick up all the trash down the street, and they have them wash all the windows on the outside, and it's like, it is really kind of a nice idea. You end up with a much cleaner building. Yeah. But then it's that sort of like, who's the teacher that takes that job and sits out there, when you're feeling short or you're feeling tight, it takes a little resource to like work in that angle. And
what we've been doing with the restorative practice at Como is we've been having, like with the Korean kids and the young African American kids, there's been a feud between them for the last 3 years that I've been there. Yep. So what we've been doing now is we've been having circles with the main heavy hitters of the African American youth and the main heavy hitters of the Korean boys. So we got them all together. So now what we did at restorative practice, we had them where now 1 week you pick a sport, next week you pick a sport, and it'll be something that, a lot of the young African American guys like to play football and basketball. The Korean guys play soccer. So it's like, okay, we're going to teach you how to play soccer. We'll teach you how to play basketball. And it's been going good. There's been no more fights between them guys. We take them for pizza, ice cream, and just sit down and try to teach them culturally. So what we did at the end of the school year is we had all the Korean kids make a dish from their heritage and bring their parents in. And we had the African American boys bring a dish from their culture. and heritage and bring their parents in. So now everybody's interacting and mingling. So it's like I get to know you now, you get to see me in a different light, and I get to see you in a different light, other than us just being, for no apparent reason, common enemies.
Do you think that could be something that's effective with the adults? Maybe Corey, you working with adults too, could speak on that. Like, could you move that up a level?
Yeah, I think restorative justice could work all the way across the level, all the way even up to murder, even with the heinous crimes. I think when we talking about restorative justice, we also got to talk about it's going to be three parties involved. It's going to be the victim, and then the person that committed the crime, and then the individuals that's applying the restorative justice principles and models, and if the individuals that's doing the application principles and models have already a bias, then that's going to affect restorative justice. And I think that part plays an effect. The person that committed the crime may wholeheartedly want to be restored. The person that had the crime committed to them may want to really bring about some closure. But if the third party has a bias and just has a funny feeling about the murder and all of that, I think that'll play an effect. And I think we don't take that in consideration. So when Jax was saying, I don't think it'll work with murder, I think that's that third party bias, that plays. Not saying he is, but I'm saying it would have an effect because he has a feeling about the murder part, whether it was committed or it was done to someone. But you would have a feeling about how you feel about that. Or let's go with like rape. Or pedophile, that. Right.
People are gonna have
the third party person may have a strong opinion on restorative justice when it comes to that, and I think that's the part that we need to take in consideration as well. If we're really talking about bringing about restorative justice in a family or in the community, all the players have to have the removal of bias, and how do you do that? How do you make that happen?
When you're saying the third party, then you're not talking about this is the victim or the persecutor.
I'm talking about the program.
The program around
That's the third party.
Has no bias around that.
Exactly.
You have to remove that from them.
Right.
Beyond just the fact that if he's, like, say, AJax is in part of it, he's got a bias about it, and he's in the victim side. Then
because I think the bias of the programs or who's implementing, who wants this to take place, has an effect. It has an effect on is it going to continue? Like, say for instance, we do a program that's really hitting, it's really doing things in the community, and I'm saying we're really making changes. It's really making the changes, doing what it needs to be doing. The families and the victims and the people that's committed the crime, we're seeing change there, right? We're seeing a lot of change. A good third party bias that I'm talking about would be okay, the program's cut. No more money.
Right.
So yeah, we've have effect. We've gotten things taken place. Things has been going well. We're making changes. We're making progress. It's really out there. We're getting a lot of feedback, a lot of data saying this is really working, and then the program gets cut. That's like a third party bias.
Yeah.
Or the program's going well, and then we run across a case that's really highly political that got this off the chain, P. Diddy, and that's going on, and restorative justice, and because it got high political, biases kick in. Third party, TMZ may have something to say, somebody else may have something to say, or Illuminati. No, I'm saying the FBI because the videos. But we're still doing restorative justice. You see what I'm saying? So I'm always concerned about if the two parties is really making it happen, then who's holding the program of the restorative justice and how they play a part. That's the elephant in the room. That's the hidden piece. That's the hidden piece. There's going to be conflict between the two parties because that's what restorative justice is about. We know that, and we want to get past that. We want to help get through all of that. But what about the players on the outside? Why? I mean, you see what I'm saying? The thing that we're talking that's unsaid is the numerous different restorative justice programs is going across the city, and how long have they been going on, and where they're at now. I'm quite sure that what caused it to play out is not the individuals, the people that's getting restored. I'm quite sure that they're not the reason why this program is not going on anymore. They're not the reason why we don't. You see what I'm saying? I'm quite sure that that's not it, because that's out there. That's out there in the community. The fact that things need to be restored, justice needs to come place between individuals is always out there. We know their work is there. But how do we keep the work going? How do we keep the good work going? How do we keep the community to keep getting restored? Who keeps that going? Because every now and then it goes for a little bit and then it stops. It goes for a little bit, then it stops. We'll get the commissioner and people in play, and like he just said, we got these different coalitions going on and all of that. We got good collaboration going on. For how long though? Mm-hmm. Then it stops.
Is there a sense that, like, right now, 2024, there's more energy around it than maybe there was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and especially you guys have done this work for a while, like, or in your reading on the history, do you feel like, I know there's certain things that become more in trend or what people are trying to do?
Right now, politically, because of the politics and where we're at, there's more energy now
than it was before.
On restorative? Than just punitive?
Yeah, because people need to be in office. It's a good piece to fight for. Everybody wants this to happen. There's too many victims out here. There's too many people committing crime out here, and they're running into each other out here. You know, that's out there. We know that. Now, if I'm running for office and I can spin this a good way, this would be a good piece for me to pick up and run with. Especially if I can go to the public defender's office and I know they got some champions that's talking about this. So I got some endorsement. Mm-hmm. Ain't that how it works?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Until I get in position, and once I get in position, then I got to put my put my money where my mouth is. Mm-hmm. Now I got to practice what I preach. But the momentum ain't as high as it was when I was trying to get in office. Once I'm in office, then boom. Now I can relax a little bit. Okay, I'll get to you.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
We'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. And that's played out time after time. I'm not telling you something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
The way I read it, and the folks that I'm working with, in agreement with all of that, we are trying to approach, this like political momentum very strategically. And I think within the past 10 years, I think there has been, frankly, a lot of white guilt around mass incarceration. And I think that really connects to a lot of the political tensions and motivations that Corey's talking about. When George Floyd was killed, that stirred up a lot of that in Minnesota, which was a major contribution to Mary Moriarty being elected county attorney. And there's a lot of controversy around what she's doing, but she has been one of the biggest champions of restorative justice, that office has ever seen. And so the folks that I'm working with are kind of just trying to be strategic about this moment, of like, how far can we push this while all these pieces are in place, knowing that these champions for restorative justice might not be here tomorrow or next year or next month or next election cycle. And another aspect of this, though, I think maybe a little bit more personally, the way I kind of operate is thinking a lot about, like, what are the integrative forces in the world? What are the constructive forces in the world that I would hope to build them up in a way that even when the political winds shift, they're still like on the ground level. We're still building that momentum. And oftentimes that building has to move a little bit slower, but it can be sturdy enough where if so-and-so loses the next election, like, we don't have to start from zero. Yeah. We're still learning together. We still have our coalitions building. And I think, the folks in this coalition that I have in mind, definitely appreciate that. And the restorative justice community as a whole, outside of this little coalition, they definitely appreciate that. I think a lot of, one of the best things that could happen for like the growth of restorative justice is we just have to start applying it and learning from those experiences and seeing where it works and seeing where it doesn't. I'm a big believer in, I would say, like, restorative practices, in the sense of, like, there's principles behind it. I don't know if we have found, we being, like, the legal community, the restorative justice community, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if any of us have found, like, a model that will work for everyone. In fact, if in anything, the way human relationships can be so complicated. Yeah. I don't know if finding the right model is always the best step, or at least there's no universal model. But if we can keep experimenting and teasing out the principles to guide the work to keep growing, that's, I think, that's what I'll place my faith in. That something is moving in the right direction.
Any ideas on what's the difference between an initiative having staying power and sort of having that sort of groundwork set, so when the political winds on chop move, which ones are the most likely to lose their roots and just kind of topple, and which ones can kind of stay with more staying? Is it more legal? Is it more nonprofit? Is it, small nonprofit? Like, have you seen any trends or patterns in the years of working on it, or anything?
That's a good question. I think the staying power would be the groundwork, and it has to be something that's unique, that's different, that's set in stone to where where it can't topple. It's like when the
like law set in stone.
Yeah, and not just law, and just the people like we'll take our organization, Change Inc. for example. This foundation was laid over 30 years ago, and so that's why we're able to still stand, even though it was the City Inc. at one time. It's just Change Inc. now. But that foundation was laid over 30 years ago with good people and people that really wanted to do this work and really wanted to see a change in our community. So that's why we're able to still go from being young kids at the City Inc. to now working for Change Inc. It's just a same foundation, same game, just a different name. So once you lay a foundation and the foundation is solid, even though the political parties might change, that foundation is already set.
But I gotta say though, that's hard. You take this place as an example. There really is no handbook on how to have that kind of groundwork. There's no repeatable routine. We're not training in. What is it that is special about you both have been doing this for 30 years together. Out of this, you came up at the city together, and now here you are. Even working here, there's no policy and procedure manual. There's no thing that then sends across and grows, and the staying power is just as long as these people are here. So it still makes it hard to imagine how you either write it into law. I mean, I see a lot of like the nonprofit winds seem to blow lightly on whatever's trendy. Mm-hmm. And so we go chasing whatever's the latest trend, and for a while it'll be these keywords, and then you go chase those keywords, and then the donors are given to that. And then that's, and then on the politics side, you get things written into law a little bit more, but that's a complicated web of its own. Now that said, if the state is running a program, it has a little more, there's something stable about it. But then again, there's something less innovative about it.
The only restorative justice practice or principle that I know of that exists beyond a nonprofit and a political platform would be the street one, the one that was developed in the streets, that key individuals that's involved in the streets can tap into. So it would be like there was a situation with Steve Floyd and another gentleman by the name of Carlos Garcia. Yeah. Those two individuals were they had beef, like real beef, like death type situation. It could go to death. Yeah. But because it was Steve Floyd and Carlos, both of them worked for the city, and Steve had brought it to my attention. He came to me first and said, "Man, we got to do something about this situation. I'm gonna do something to Carlos." So then now it's restorative justice. Now we need to get these two individuals together, work this situation out, or it's gonna be a problem. And ball set in motion. So the calls need to be made. People needed to be getting in contact. The time frame needed to be. We need to identify a place, a comfortable place for both of them to come to. All of the things that the processes that go with the other two restorative justice platforms. You would do that in the nonprofit, and you would do that in the political things also. Bring the parties together, and we did that. We brought them together, and we got to the bottom of the situation, and now where they're right now today, they're still not friends. They're still not, but they're not killing each other. And you know, and no, I don't even think they speak. Yeah, I don't think even they speak. There's no communication at all. They showed up at the funeral for one of the brothers' funerals. They showed up, but they were cordial with each other and went their separate ways. But we were able to resolve that. And there was no money involved, no political insight, no contract, but it was the most genuine restorative justice approach, and it still exists. That's the answer, but it got to be grassroots. It got to be built up from the community, you know. And there's no money involved. No contracts, you know. That would be the answer. But to tap into it is the other two platforms are unable to tap into it. You know.
Well, then to say so we got these examples of restorative justice, and I feel like we're throwing this out, and it's become a little bit of a theme of like, this is something we all like. Is that agreed? We prefer restorative justice to the alternative in this space.
What's the alternative?
Exactly. That's what I want to know. What's the alternative to restorative justice? It's restorative justice instead of? Is it a grocery list of 10 different options? Is it just restorative and then punitive? Just punishing them until they stop it? It's like the difference between trying to get my kid to understand why he needs to not hate his brother.
A lot of times there's restorative justice from the legal aspect is you've already did something.
Right.
It's already been done. You've already committed a crime. You've already put yourself in a situation, and now you may or may not be feeling a certain type of way on how you feel after the act is done, or the individual that you've done it to may or may not be feeling a certain type of way. Then what triggers restorative justice? I committed a crime. I did something to an individual, and then at what point, whose point, calls the restorative justice? I did it. I'm feeling remorseful. I want to reach out to tell these people that. Is that when it's triggered? Or I don't have no remorse, and the people that I did this to are feeling like, you know what, I'm not going to hold it against you. Is that when it's triggered? Or neither party is you know, and then the third party is saying, you know, let's bring these people together and maybe they should bring some restorative justice. What triggers it?
Because, like you said, you have three different aspects. Like you said, you have the party that committed the crime, and like you said, it might be, like Corey said, it might be that person is genuinely like, you know, I'm sorry. Or it could be the other party who the crime was committed to, like Corey said, that like, hey, you know, I want to speak to this person and see why this was committed in order to forgive him. Or it could be the justice system. That like, you know what, is a part of your release or your conditional release or part of you being paroled, you have to meet with this person. And then that's where we have to look at it. Now, I'm being forced to do this doesn't mean it's genuine.
Right, right.
So
it's not the same.
It's not the same
forgiveness and restoration. Exactly what's happening.
That comes from just that person genuinely being remorseful. Because you got some people that aren't remorseful and will just do things because, okay, I want to go home.
It's just transactional now. And so now that's we got like a lot of great food for like what the relational and the human side and how that works out. But then taking that into scaling it and having systems and structures around it, and I imagine that's more where you're thinking about it, is watching it happen in the court system itself, and how does that play out, and then how are they talking about it? How do you translate the Steve Floyd or Oswaldo Garcia, Carlos Garcia? How do you translate that to scaling and what decisions you're making as far as the court system, Eddie?
I mean, I think the example that Corey gave it sounds like it was recognized and addressed before the courts touched it, which is a beautiful thing, which is one of the reasons I like, thinking of restorative practices is a pretty ambiguous or whatever, like a cloud of ideas and principles. And you're right that since I work in the justice system now, in some ways, I'm looking to make the justice system, like when we were talking earlier about like this third party in the relationship, like I'd like the justice system to be a system where like people will come out better on the other side. Like AJax was talking about how he's worked with some folks, who some young people who were involved in the carjackings and stuff. And just within the last month or two, I met someone, a new client, who I could tell from his record he was one of those kids, and now he's an adult. So now I'm trying to help him out. And it made me think about, I mean, I haven't had a chance to get to know him well, but if the standard response to these types of issues is, jail time, punishment, I don't see that addressing some underlying need of, what does this young person need to grow? Now he's, by the legal system's definition, an adult, but he's still like a young person who needs some pretty dynamic assistance. And I think going back to like the earlier question of like restorative justice as an alternative to what, there is a lot of people fight over the history and evolution of restorative practices and restorative justice. A lot of folks would say Native American communities were doing it way before white people came to this country, so I wouldn't be able to say where it started. And I'm not an expert on how it has grown. But it's clear that at some point in this country, putting people in prison became like the de facto solution. And the more severe wrong has occurred, the more severe crime has occurred, the more time we want to put them in prison.
Yep. So that they don't do it again just because they don't want to go to prison. Right.
But like the data clearly says like that's not actually a motivating factor. And for me, something I think a lot about is, the United States incarcerates drastically more people than many other countries of the world, all other countries of the world, in fact. Even in Minnesota is not as bad as Texas, but Minnesota still incarcerates, multiples more people than any other country in the world. So I think that, to me, I already want to be on the side of trying to keep people out of prison and reducing the amount of times that we have to use prison as a resolution. So that's one of the things that attracts me to all this restorative practices stuff. And I think it might be helpful to give like just one last real specific example because, I feel like I don't want to be too ambiguous about this stuff. A lot of my cases are like domestic violence cases. There's a couple of people who got some kids and they got in some arguments or a series of arguments, and some of these arguments got physical, and then the justice system gets involved. And like the justice system's solution is, and a lot of times like this is, a young couple with like a couple of kids, don't got a lot of money. Because of this new charge that just came up, one of the parents in this situation has to go live somewhere else, where like the first thing that the justice system is doing, introducing to this situation, is kicking somebody out of the house. So like they gotta just more bills to pay. Who's gonna watch the kids when so-and-so has to go to work? They used to trade off with a lot of those things. To me, like we're already moving in the wrong direction. The quickest way to resolve that situation for, these couple of parents, is, well, one of them has to plead guilty. One of them has to like admit that they punched somebody or admit that they tried to scare somebody, at least. And I don't believe that having that conviction on their record is going to help anything. Like we still have a handful of people in a relationship, and wouldn't it be nice if the justice system actually saw it as their role as to like help this relationship, heal it? Not saying they got to be together forever, not saying they got to split up, but just understand how to respect each other, understand how to get into disagreements and conflicts and resolve those in healthy ways. And that's, the type of restorative practices that I'm really reaching for.
I do struggle a bit when I look at that, like, and I'm picturing, most of my time in court has been potential jury duty. So I'm picturing that building and all the laws and the rules and the process that is built basically to, put people on a really long time out until they knock their shit off. And we're trying to do a different style of parenting where we're saying, hey, let's get in front of this, and how do we heal this relationship situation, which does actually then ties in my head to like a lot of the work we do here with, you're trying to engage with the community, engage with the families, and stabilize them before they get to that situation. You're trying to do targeted case management and help them out before they get into a spot where they're basically they're going backwards now. Like now they're already struggling, and now they're going to a harder place thanks to trying to make justice happen. And it feels somewhat to me like that system is built to enact the punishment, kind of like police, what the role is of all those players. Are we asking that system to become restorative? Is that more practical than asking ourselves to have systems out in front of that are doing restoration work, so that we just have to do as little as possible of getting to that point of like, hey, we're at this point when there's a case when it's like, if you clearly aren't knocking it off, this person is not compliant, like we need to just remove them from the situation. And there's that spot. And I don't know where that balance is. I'm sure there is a lot of work going on there. There's a lot of restorative activity happening, trying to help families and kids, and you're doing work to help families and kids right now to not get to that spot.
Yep.
Even your work with, like, say, the carjackings, like, do you feel like there's restorative activity going out in the front that's more important, or do you see a kid who carjacks that you're working with and he gets to the court system and there's a restorative practice that they do right there that helps them just as much?
I think in that case is a little bit of both if you get ahead of it, because I feel that if you catch the kids early,
in ages,
yeah, anywhere between 6 and 10, if you catch them at that time, you can start implementing some of that restorative practices. You can start showing them something different. But once they get past that age, you still can do restorative practices. But I don't know if it's, mainly if the legal system does it. I don't know how, I don't know.
Have you seen it happen?
Yeah, I've seen it where
Have you seen it help with some of them, or?
It helped with some of them, but not with a lot of them, because now it's like, I'm just going to do this because I'm down in JDC.
And they're still playing tough, and they're like, I'd jack into the car if I could. But.
Yeah, and they 9 times out of 10, or 10 times out of 10, they do. They'll say all the right things and do all the right things, because now I'm being put on the ankle bracelet, the home monitoring system. I'm being sent to a group home, so I'm gonna play this role just until I get comfortable and I get you comfortable enough. Prime example, we had 3 young men. They're all brothers. They're all 3 of them is in a group home in St. Paul, and because 2 of them don't like structure. They've never had this structure before in their life. Mom's not around. Their dad was killed when they were young, so mom's doing her thing. They're with an auntie who also has her own problems with her own kids, doing the same thing. It's like a family thing to steal cars. Well, 2 of them decided that they didn't want to stay in the group home because they didn't like being told what to do, and they left and ran away. And they just recently got picked up, and now they're back in JDC. And these same 4 boys, the 3 brothers and the cousin, they're in and out of JDC. And we just recently got them to come to one of our family therapy sessions. And one of the young men, and it's crazy to hear a child say that, man, I've done so much and been through so much in my life that I don't even know how to cry. He said, I lost a best friend, and I just sat there and was like, He said, I don't even know how to shed tears. And it's crazy because, I mean, you know, as men, we get that persona, you know, oh, that's a sign of weakness, but you're human at the end of the day. And, you know, and he said, this is the most I've talked to anybody in the 15 years I've been on this planet. He said, I would have never talked to you guys about anything. He said, but you guys have been here. You stayed in our butts. Every time I see you, you get on me. He said, so now I feel comfortable. So that's part of, to me, the restorative practice. It's just, you have to be genuine. And you also have to come from that lifestyle to me. You have to, in order for me to teach somebody to teach me something, you can't just tell me about it. You have to, for me, you have to have been through it. Because then I know I can see the end results. You've been through this. You've been through A, B, C, and D, and now you're on your way to X, Y, Z. And I've seen the changes. You can't just tell me something and I'm like, oh, because you're telling me this, I'm supposed to change because you say so.
It's like there's a lot more work that has to be done with individuals before the restorative justice part kicks in.
Yes.
You know, especially when you're talking about the victim or the person that committed the crime. You want to know, you know, what you want to get like deep into why. What happened to you? Mm-hmm. What sequences of events took place in your life that led you to this point, to where you don't have no remorse, or to where you know, in order for us to do it seems like the restorative justice part comes at the last minute, at the last part, and there needs to be some restorative therapeutic work needs to be done with individuals on both sides. Both sides. That needs to be done. That type of work needs to be done to help replenish, rebuild an individual up so that I can be prepared to do the restorative justice work. But if I just get right there from at say in the system, and then I'm coming from my cell to meet with my public defender to talk about restorative justice with the victim, but I never dealt with my stuff, then how genuine can I be? How genuine? How you know? And is the system prepared to say, okay, yeah, we know we need restorative justice between this family and the person that committed the crime, but is the system going to say, let us take the time to build this, to get to this, or is it based on the clock? We need this done by 6 months.
Right. It's a deal. There's a contract.
Come on,
out
it's
there.
part of the it's part of the plea. See, all of that plays an effect.
Yeah.
All of that's going to play, and then it's then how am I feeling, the person that committed the crime, or how is the person feeling that genuinely wants to be restored with this? You know, how are they feeling when I got to hurry up? Yeah. And I think those things play into effect. And then the other part is the color. We talked about how many the United States locking so many people up, and Minnesota locking so many people up. How many of those people are of color?
Of color.
You know, and then I'm in the system that's not designed for me. But yet and still you want to tell me that you have a restorative justice piece that's for me, but the part that's for me has got me locked up. So which part of these parts is for me? All the mass incarceration of all my brothers and sisters in here, that's for me, or the restorative justice that you're handpicking to want to deal with me.
Right.
And like Byrd said, you got to, and also is the system ready to, like he said, catch that at the beginning and deal with that family's trauma, because this young man that I'm talking about, his father, and when I asked her, I said, man, you know, whenever you mention where's your father, you can see his whole body change, and he doesn't have a relationship. He's like, man, me and my pops is more like homies, and he was like, so, but I said, so are you angry at your father? Because whenever somebody asks you about your father, I notice your whole body language changed, and he was like, yeah. He's like, man, I don't need him to be a friend. I need him to be my father. So, as Byrd was saying, is the system prepared to not just deal with the restorative part of the person that committed the crime and the victim, but ready to deal with the person who committed the crime and go deeper into the family aspect of it. And for this, and like Byrd said, I don't see the system ready to do that. I see it's like, hey, this is part of your plan. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. You need this restorative practice, and like Byrd said, we need this done within 6 months. Is that really restorative practice, or is it just this is like you said, it's a contract, and you need to follow this contract? Are we really getting to the roots? Because there has to be a reason why you went right instead of going left, or just staying straight. There has to be a reason. There was some type of family dynamic that made you decide, I am going to do this street stuff. I'm going to steal cars. And a lot of the youth that I deal with, when we ask them the question, it's because they're in poverty. They don't have any money. Mom needs help. I want nice things. The best way to do it is I'm going to steal a car, hopefully get it to a chop shop, get a couple $1,000s, and now I can help. Or I'm the man now because I got a couple dollars in my pocket. Instead of, and again, I feel with restorative practice, it can't just be where we're meeting in a room. We have to make sure that there's something in the community. That's part of these young men having. When we grew up, we had CETA and summer jobs. Right now, there's nothing in the community to deter these young men and young women from stealing these cars. There's no more rec centers. There's no more boys and girls clubs. There's no more jobs in the community. There's no more training. There's nothing for these young people. So when you talk about restorative practice, you got to start from, if I'm gonna restore you, I gotta be able to make sure that I put things in place to help restore you. That's just like a drug dealer. You can't tell a drug dealer who's making, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000 a day to go get a 9-to-5 job. You can't. He's going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, dude, I make more in a day than you make in a 2-week paycheck. So how do you get him from selling drugs without replacing what he's doing? So you have to give them something in order to make them change their mindset on the things that they're doing. And there's nothing in the community. You could, like Byrd said, you could drive down Franklin to Chicago right now, and you'll see between coming from downtown all the way up to Chicago, by PV Park on up, you'll see about 100 people just outside doing nothing. Half of them are high, half of them just out, half of them drinking. So you have to get to the root of that cause of why are you guys out here? What took place or what trauma happened in your life that made you resort to this when you could do the same thing that the four of us do? We get up every day and go to work, whether we want to or not, because we know the bigger picture. We have families to take care of. We got bills to pay. So what made you so carefree and reckless and careless that you decided, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sit around all day and do nothing. So, and then how do you get them from point A to point B when there's nothing in place? I got to jump through hoops just to get something from this system. You want to see this, you want me to do this, you want me to do that, you want me to do this.
Right. You got to fill out this, you got to fill out that, you got to meet these requirements, you got to hope they didn't get back to you.
Yeah, and then we'll get back to it. And if you don't meet these requirements, I'm still stuck at point A.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to do, well, for most people, I'm going to do what I know how to do to survive. So when we talk restorative practice, we got to talk in a complete 360-degree circle. You have to, because you can't just say, oh, I want to restore this person. Not everybody can be restored. And we also have to look at that picture. You have to go, like Byrd said, you have to get deeper into like what we do here. When we have the IFS system, it takes you deeper into yourself. You have to look at and see why. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to restore this person." You got to say, you know what caused this?
Right.
What made this person do the things that they're doing?
Okay, I don't have a specific prompt, but I really would love to know what you're thinking, Eddie, off off all the things that they just said. Like, how do you relate to that in your like role, and as you're thinking about it, and you coalitions of people talking about it, how do they get to that level of conversation?
I mean, I think in agreement with everything y'all are saying, the way I see it is, my role in the system is to try to get the system to adopt these practices that ideally they're already happening in the community. For me, like one helpful example, Kevin Reese of Until We're All Free. I should have brought his name up earlier because he kind of brought me into the coalition. He gave the example once when asked the question, like, where did you first hear about restorative justice? He went to prison when he was young. And he just gave the example of like, when you have all these people like in the prison yard, like disagreements, fights, all this stuff come up all the time. How are you going to work it out? And you really want to work it out before like the COs get involved, so that's where he first started to learn restorative practices is, how do you work those things out with the other people in the yard? And, so for me, that's a helpful example of like, there's just something human about this stuff, how do humans like work this stuff out? I think you and I, John, outside of Change Inc. and podcast as friends, we talk a lot about this type of stuff in like a spiritual context, like what are these spiritual principles of like compassion and justice and how do they work between individuals? So that's what I'm hearing a lot from you two, Corey and AJax. And then my work as a public defender, it's kind of like, how do we bring those things into the system that frankly is kind of fucking people up? I don't
That's the best way to say it.
Yeah. I don't know how far you want me to go on this podcast, but like in this country, we have a status quo that keeps some people safe, but it creates more danger for some people. And on some level, when I become a part of that system, anyone with a law degree is mostly enjoying that safety of the system, like it's mostly like embracing and benefiting from the status quo. So there's many elements of it that like I have to admit like need to be maintained. But there's also elements that like we gotta change because a lot of people are suffering under the system. And that's really where my focus goes. And, as a public defender, if my client says I am not guilty, I want to fight this case, I am down to ride for that person. But most cases, guilty and innocent is kind of blurry, or like, yeah, sure, I did it, but like, I don't think that should make me a criminal, or, yeah, sure, I did it, but we got these circumstances and let's just, try to work out this bigger picture. Restorative justice is a better approach to like address all of those cases, So that is why a lot of my focus, in this work is how do we expand things in that direction?
Do you see it sort of, I don't know, in a way, AJax, like your whole saying, like we got to get them when they're 6 to 10, and then connecting that to you talking about working with adults and restorative justice practices. And then we got the piece where it's the court system sort of saying, restore, heal, now. Those pieces mixed together feel like a really difficult cocktail to make into something that's effective. Like how do you see it working with adults? Is this sort of a deal option on the table when making a guilty not guilty? It's like one of the possible things the judge could hit is go restore now.
So in a very small number of cases, it is already an option, mostly within in Minnesota. It's kind of mostly been used in like drug possession cases. Fifth degree drug possession, which is decriminalized in many places already, so those situations I'm not always super excited about on the adult level. There's also, in Minnesota, there's quite a few treatment courts, which are probably a pretty strong option. Treatment courts is like, if someone keeps getting in legal trouble, the courts and, parties involved might recognize, well, there's like alcohol addiction or drug addiction or mental health issues that like underlie all of this. Yeah. So let's try to remedy that. practically speaking, that usually gets involved when a person has like so many DWIs that like they will spend time in prison. And an alternative to that is to go to DWI court, and after going through some really intense probation, then restorative justice will be a part of that. So those are like specifics around this is where restorative justice is already an option. I am trying to expand it to a lot more, situations. And the response I usually get when I bring that up with a prosecutor is something between restorative justice. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, never heard of it. I'd have to talk to my boss's boss, so we're not going there. And there are some people that are like, yeah, restorative justice is really great. Like, I haven't really had time to look into it. I'm open to it, but like it's going to take some work. So in both of those cases, I just see it as like, okay, I got to do the work, because I do think it will bring better resolutions for the community and for my clients. And on the short term, I advocate for that specific case. Like if they, if so and so says like they can prove my client did something, I'm going to say, you really got to prove it. Like, I'm going to push it to make sure we can really prove this out, if my client's going to be punished for it. But like on a more long-term strategy, or medium term at least, I start to explore a lot of these restorative justice stuff and see how it can come in. I should also say, actually, there is something called restorative court in Hennepin County, and other counties as well, have different versions of this, where the word restorative is thrown around, but it usually doesn't mean quite the same thing, but it's still really positive for the most part. It's for folks who, when you're in restorative court, they will often connect you with like a social worker, recognizing that, yeah, you have a string of cases, a string of charges or whatever. One more guilty conviction probably isn't going to help as much as like a social worker that can like help you get some services in the community. So yeah, there's a smattering of things that are offered, but I'm still pushing for more.
Cool. Yeah, I was thinking I got my bike and weed whacker and leaf blower stolen yesterday or a day or two ago. I was thinking if I could find the person, I could just work it out with you. I just want them to do my yard work for the summer. Just got to whack on my weeds.
Right.
And they also got to give me rides once a week because they stole my bike.
Yes, that's a great example.
Restorative justice.
Yes, that's it. Restorative justice.
We're kind of at the wrapping up point, but as years of experience I have, I'm pointing like it's one side of the table and the other, but Eddie's recently embarked on this career. He left behind his life of coding and making software, which we could probably use here at work someday, maybe, to try out this public defending hat this last year. I mean, do you have anything just off this conversation or any pieces of wisdom from your years that you want to say his way, and then we call it a wrap?
Just sit down with other guys like us, or with us that's been in this.
You'll get together with them again.
Yeah, we do that. We definitely do that. And
Thank you.
I mean, like Byrd said, it got to be a street aspect to all of this. I mean, who better to help somebody in restorative practice than the people that's already been through this? Then have been in the streets and now who are in this field now. It's a lot easier because we've seen that part, and we've been doing this amongst each other for forever. Like he said, with Steve and Carlos, and me and him in other situations, to where we've had to sit down and talk to people and, hey, we need to get here, we need to do this, we need to do that, to make sure that we're all here the next day, or at least those people are still here. Because street justice and restorative practice, two different things. But if you can do that with street guys, you could do it with anybody.
Restorative street justice.
Yes. All
right. Well, there we go. Thank you all so much. If anybody actually listened this long, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll call it a podcast. Over and out. Anybody? Any ideas for the exit song, Corey? You want to sing something? He's not going to sing anything. All right, he's not going to sing anything. He can sing though.